And welcome to the City of Breezy Point Planning Commission meeting. I will call the meeting to order, and we will review the February 9th Planning Commission minutes. Would anyone care to move the approval of those minutes?
One question. I know the agenda says February 9th and the minutes say February 10th. I don't know which one it was.
Good job.
I only noticed it now. I wouldn't come prepared for this.
I will make the correction.
Which one is correct? I don't know that it matters.
Been a long time, Larry.
For me especially.
I think it was the 10th.
Okay.
I'd bet on Kathy.
We will move to the City Council liaison. Oh, sorry, we need a motion.
I'll move that we accept the minutes with the change of date if needed.
Have a second?
A second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion of that motion? If not, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passed.
Can I ask that we make a change to the agenda? Is this the appropriate time to do it?
Sure.
I'd like to move the discussion of the dormitory facility and the conditional use permit up right under J.
Okay. Any objections?
Oh, I had that note on mine too.
Oh, good. Okay. We will do that. Please remind me. Okay, City Council liaison report. Councilman Blackton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some brief notes to move it along also expeditionally. Number one, Airport Day will be May 7th. I see some blank looks there, but Airport Day is a kind of a celebration that the airport puts on and sponsored by Commander Bar, city supported, from 5/7 from 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. And it's tours of the hangars, airport displays, some takeoff and landing demonstrations, a free pig roast, and pop for the kids. I'd be a child. And one and all is invited to that. It was very successful last year. The city had its first last year, and it was a tremendous success. So I would encourage all of you to attend that. It's a fun time. Second, of note, the audit report that was done. Schlenner and Wenner rhymes. John Archer presented that to CPA. Status of the city, if you will, and the city is in wonderful shape. 25 years of serving the city on planning and zoning and second-term council. The city of Breezy Point has never been in a better shape than it is today, and I'm very proud of that. Sewer back up. No-fault insurance plan was approved by the council to indemnify the city in the case of a sewer backup, and I think there's only been 2 in the city's history. Is that right, Joe?
Yep.
Both costly and contentious and not good. So the city's now indemnified against the sewer backup to take care of all that, and I think that's very important. Very inexpensive, by the way. Lastly, Pequot Lakes Fire Chief was here. New contract was signed, very good contract, slight increase, minimal. Unfortunately, the increase includes both assessment to both cities, and we contribute a minuscule amount less than the city of Pequot Lakes does, so therefore the fire truck reads Pequot Lakes Fire Department and Breezy Point. So if the populace wants to chip in some more money, a few bucks a piece, then we can have Breezy Point first, Pequot last. And the fire chief is bigger than everybody in this room, so I defer. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Any questions of Councilman spot. Well, thank you. We will move to the open forum number 1, and I will open the open forum. Would anyone like to speak during open forum number 1? There will be an open forum later in the agenda, which we'll call open forum number 2, but would anyone like to speak at this time? If not, we'll move to a public hearing to consider a conditional use application for animal husbandry. And I will open that public hearing and ask Jerry for his staff review.
Okay, this is conditional use permit application 2016-01. The applicant is Chris Lindholm. The property address is 8442 Bushman Road, Breezy Point. The property is zoned estate lots. The size of the property is 20 acres. The request is for animal husbandry to allow the raising of sheep and chickens on the parcel. Our ordinance allows animal husbandry in estate lots, zoned property, and the size of the property dictates the amount of animals that could be allowed on the piece of property. The findings upon the review of the conditional use application, the use is appropriate with a conditional use in in the estate lots zoned property. I should say that the type of zoning dictates the amount of animals that can be there, and also the size of the property dictates it. And there are some other zones where it's allowed, but it's not allowed with a conditional use. It's allowed. Some places it's allowed just to happen without a permit. Some places it requires an interim use permit. Because it's consistent with the ordinance and it meets the terms of conditional uses, the applicant has filed the appropriate application. The applicant has paid the appropriate fee. Notice of a hearing was given. It's also published, notice of the hearing and written, and the hearing will be held this evening. Staff recommends that the conditional use be approved with conditions. Potential conditions could be maximum number of sheep, maximum number of chickens, adequate shelter protection for the animals, confined to a fenced area at all times, animal waste contained on the site and disposed of properly. Those are just potential conditions that you could attach. I'm sure there are certainly many more, and sometimes they come from this type of public hearing that we attend, or that we assume some more conditions that could be placed on the permit. But the application is consistent with the ordinance.
Are there any questions of Jerry at this time?
I think I heard Chris already has some sheep.
I guess, yes, there are some there. What I would suggest that you ask that question of the applicant. The applicant
Okay.
is in the audience, and,
Okay.
and he can address those issues.
Any questions of Jerry? If- Okay, if not, would Mr. Lindholm like to come to the microphone, and if you would state your name and address, which we
bet.
already know, but
You bet. Thank you, I appreciate that. Is this on? We're good?
should be.
Okay. Chris Lindholm, we're at 8442 Bushman Road. Thank you for having us here. And Would you like me just to address the question right away?
Sure.
Appreciate that. We purchased the property in 2013 from the Vanderlets, and the Vanderlets, when we purchased the property, had a couple of horses. So I falsely assumed that that's good to go. And part of the deal when we bought the property was that we would purchase the fencing and we would purchase the barn and all the things that go with what they had to have horses. So we went ahead and purchased some sheep and had some chickens, and then I was looking into deer hunting code and looked at zoning regulation and went, oh shoot, I better call the Joe and come and get the right paperwork, because it's our intent to always be above board and be operating within the law. So that's why that happened.
Questions?
Any other
of,
questions?
Chris?
How many sheep do you have now then?
We bought 4 ewes and 1 ram, and at noon today, a lamb was born. So now we have 6.
Okay. And how many chickens do you have now?
We have 12 layers, yeah, that have a coop and a run. And actually, the reason we bought the chickens was because when we moved here, my dog was impaled with 1 million wood ticks. And so we had them running around to take care of a whole bunch of the wood ticks. And they do a great job and stay within our property. And we lock them up at night every night.
Is your fencing now a sheep-type fencing, or is it just from the horses?
I appreciate that. The number one issue with sheep is not keeping them in, it's keeping predators out. It's pretty easy to keep sheep in, but wolves, and actually the biggest predator of sheep is domestic dogs. So the area that we seclude them every night to keep them safe has 5-foot wire weld fencing and a barbed wire strip at the bottom to keep them safe. During the day, I do use some electric portable fence in the summertime to pasture them on the rest of the property that I can't afford to fence in yet, to keep them safe there. But so we move them around during the day, during the summer, but keep them every night up locked tight inside a good barrier fence. And then in the wintertime, they're in the barn and in that barrier fence all winter long.
Is that on the east side of your property where it's pretty open? We looked at it on...
Yeah, right east of the barn there was a corral, and so that's what I fenced in initially. That was to keep a place to bring them in every night. Since then, I did fence in an area that I own on the west side, in a west pasture, west of our house. That's where we put the ram here while the lambs are being born. So my intent is to have a perimeter fence that's safe, and then I can move them from area to area, but we're a long ways away from that because that fencing is pretty costly.
So during the winter, then they're on the east side in that open area?
Yep, that's right. But since the west is open now and fenced in and safe, next winter I would foresee having some sheep on that side as well, further away from neighbors and quieter.
So is the barn large enough for 20 sheep?
No. Sheep actually don't need a barn. All they need is a run-in shelter from rain and wind. That was there. It was convenient. When that's needed, mostly is during lambing, and to make sure that lambs are warm and safe and out of the wind. So I don't really intend to add on any barn. I have enough space there. I don't intend to grow an enormous flock. That's not how I make money. It's more or less because my wife is a knitter and a spinner, and these are fiber sheep. And so we shear them and then transfer the yarn or the fiber into yarn. So I don't intend to get a huge flock. I don't have time for a huge flock.
You do the shearing yourself?
I tried. Yeah, I think next year we'll be hiring that one done.
Got it.
My back couldn't take too many of those.
Okay. No, I know they don't need a shelter if you have a sufficient fence and you
Right.
feel that that's sufficient to keep the coyotes or dogs out.
Exactly. That's the big issue, is the coyotes and the dogs. Yep, predators.
About how much does each one weigh?
They're about 140, they're small enough I can take them still. So 140, 150 pounds each.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was doing some research online, and you can have one of these if you want. What's it from? It's from Goat Connection. It's managing sheep and goat manure, and it states in there that for each 1,000 pounds of live sheep, you would have 40 pounds of manure per day. So you have about how many pounds of sheep with 20 would be?
If I had 20 full-size sheep, that'd be a lot of manure.
Yes.
That's not my intent. I applied for that permit to make sure that I wasn't out of compliance when we had lambs. So really, I don't intend to have a flock of 20 ewes running around.
Okay.
Yeah,
A lot of them have twins.
right, exactly.
typically.
So if you, exactly, so if you have 10 sheep and they all twinned, you'd just like that have 30. Which is why on the permit, I think I said 40. Is that what I wrote?
50.
50? Yeah. So that I didn't ever break a rule. I don't want to break a rule. So I wrote that. With the manure, the other thing about small ruminant animals is, unlike a cow or cattle that are much larger, which compact the soil, small ruminant animals help build up soil. And so manure out on a pasture is not an issue. It helps build up soil and make the soil more robust and a better pasture. The only real issue with manure is when you have a high concentration, say in a barn or in a real locked up area. And what I've been doing thus far is piling that up and composting it. You compost it for about 10 to 12 months, and then it's a very hot commodity for any gardener or landscaper to be able to take that and put it on a garden, which I've been doing in my garden, and I have a few neighbors that have already asked me if they can have some of that. So I'm trying to make sure I stage that and compost it appropriately for them.
What about on a hot, humid day? How is that?
It is.
No odor, or there is an odor from it?
There's not a bad odor at all. No. I don't think so.
So it's a good odor.
Actually, if you ever smell a compost pile when you're turning compost, it's not a bad smell. It's quite sweet. If it's been composted appropriately with good carbon mix with it, which is part of the science of it.
If you had 20, you couldn't hardly compost that much, could you?
It's not much at all, actually.
Yeah.
No, and in fact, after the one pile sat for 12 months, it's barely enough to put a little 4x8 trailer in to take it to my father-in-law's garden. So it's not a lot. That's kind of the point. It's a good thing for people that want it, and there are several folks that have already called me saying, hey, they want some of that manure.
And you're
Which I'm happy
intending,
to give away.
you're intending to sell the lambs then, at some point?
Yeah, exactly. There's a niche market out there for high quality fiber sheep, and so we would sell the lambs. And I don't want to get a flock too big, so that's the biggest money maker actually, is when you sell the lambs. It's way more profit to sell a lamb than it is to sell just the fiber.
Does your property have low spots where you have the risk of runoff, and where any of the manure could reach a stream or lake?
No, it's all sand, and it's all flat, with the exception of the very west side of the west pasture.
And if there were runoff of that very far west, where would the water go?
East towards my house. And
So it doesn't go off of the property?
right, yeah.
Your 20 acres is kind of long?
Yeah, it's 210, so it runs north-south.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
So you would pasture to the north more for the buildings?
To the north of the pole barn, there's a little bit of pasture there,
Oh, okay.
which steps into that second 10 acres to the north. To the east-west, it's just one 10-acre square wide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, I don't know if it's for you or for staff. If he's into selling them, are we running up against a home business here?
Think so.
I don't know the answer to that question.
So I guess a question to that would be, if my wife knits and creates a gorgeous purse and sells it at a craft show down on Thursday at Pequot, is that against any rules? That's essentially what we're doing right now. I would sure hope not.
Unless you wouldn't be selling from your home, though, but you would be selling the lambs from your home.
I
right?
could, yeah, we'd have to truck them from there. Yep. And that's done, to be transparent, that's done when you go to fairs like the Shepherd's Harvest Festival down in St. Paul. You make contacts, people that are other breeders of that, they want a ram. You say, all right, we'll sell you one for $400, and they write us a check and we drive over there. So it's you
So
know,
you're taking them someplace else, it's
Right.
not someone coming,
right.
you don't have a big lambs for sale sign,
Right, no. There's not a lot of lamb traffic on Bushman Road, so
probably not.
A lot of truck traffic.
there's a lot of, yeah, dump trucks. Right.
Other questions of Mr. Renholm?
I guess the only thing I would say in closing is, A, thank you for hearing this, and then really the big intent when we moved here, along with my wife spinning and knitting, is I have a 14-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter who aren't into a whole lot of school activities, and the intent here was to help raise my kids while they're young, to learn how to work hard and shovel and do the good work that I think farmers do. And I'm not going to make any money. If I recover the thousands of dollars I've already invested into some of this, that'll be a miracle. It's more about a lesson for my children and the hobby that my wife engages in. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to make a statement? Okay, would you come up to the microphone and state your name and address, please?
Yeah, my name is Joe Albrecht, and I live 32235 Northwoods Lane, which is just east and adjacent to the property in question. I also want to say that I've always tried to be a good neighbor, and this is not a hill I want to die on. But I do have a number of very specific questions for this commission, and I've also got 2 or 3 statements I would like to make. And by the way, what I just heard, I believe your ordinance does not permit any commercial use of animal husbandry. I couldn't find it as I looked through right now, but I'm sure I read that. I wondered if the actual physical site for the proposed animal husbandry on the property had been viewed, inspected, or evaluated by the Planning Commission, and I take it that the answer is yes. And of the 20 acres, I wonder how many are actually suitable for sheep. I also wonder if a site plan for the project has been filed with the city, and if so, has the public had an opportunity to view that site plan? I'd also like to know the exact number of chickens and sheep being requested. I've heard 20 tonight, I've read 50, and tonight's resolution in front of you seems to specify up to 100 of each on page 2, although there is a question mark after the number 100. I'm wondering how many acres will be fenced for sheep and exactly where on the property the sheep will be located. It sounds like the whole property will be fenced and the sheep will be moved around. The ordinance does specify, and I'm quoting, that an adequate shelter shall be provided, end quote. And I wonder if that ordinance specifies what an adequate shelter is. Do we know what materials are used to construct such a shelter? Do we know its dimensions? And more importantly, do we know its location? I think that's important to adjacent property owners. Ordinance directs that animal waste, this is a quote, animal waste be contained on site, managed, and disposed of properly. Now, I'm originally an Iowa boy, so I've got some experience personally with sheep waste, and I can assure you that it can be powerfully odoriferous. I'm wondering, how will compliance with this condition be monitored by the city? I wonder if there are any penalties that exist for non-compliance, and I wonder who will enforce this. On a related point, I have to wonder how a flock of sheep will, and I'm quoting now from your resolution approving conditional use application, which you have in front of you tonight. I'm quoting directly from that. how a flock of sheep will, quote, promote the prevention and control of pollution of the ground and surface waters. Also, how is a flock of sheep compatible with, I'm quoting again, promoting and preserving the Northwoods character of the community? It is a residential community, quoting from the same document. And I'm wondering if the commission is at all concerned about establishing a precedent here with this particular resolution. Could there be unforeseen consequences? If I had 10 or 20 acres, would it be okay if I bought hogs? How about peacocks? How about a bison? And these things may seem far-fetched, but I've been on commissions and I've seen how these things sometimes develop. Finally, the previous owner had a couple of horses on the property. Okay. This application contends that a sizable flock of sheep is, quote, very consistent with prior use, end quote. I do not see the equivalence, nor do I see the consistency. I also fail to see how the city can possibly know, claim, or guarantee that this proposed use shall, and I'm quoting again from your document, not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity, nor substantially diminish or impair property values in the immediate vicinity, end quote. I contend it's more reasonable to assume neighboring property values will be adversely affected. And finally, I wish to declare I have absolutely nothing personally against sheep. I just do not want to get sheared. So I hope you'll consider some of these questions before you approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by the commission members?
No, I thought that was a good list of questions. I would almost like to have a copy of them. It'd just be good to address some of those questions.
Were you able to?
We've got it recorded one way or the other. I mean, I can't regurgitate it all,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But they have been recorded?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other public statements that anyone would like to make? If not, I will close the public hearing, and the next item on the agenda is action on this application. Discussion by the commissioners of the application.
Well, I agree with Carol. I think this is a very good list of questions. And I guess I'd have to say we'd probably all have a lot of the same questions. And so then we would need to know if staff can address those.
Jerry?
One of the questions that I think that's at the crux of the issue that the gentleman had was, what happens if there's a mistake, or what happens if there's something wrong that goes wrong, or if there's complaints or whatever. I think that's one of the reasons why the application is a conditional use permit. And the conditional use permit, number one, allows you to put conditions on the permit, or the permission to do what you're granting him to do. But it also allows you, if in fact there is a concern, or if there's, say there's odor, say there's runoff, say there's rampant complaints and those type of things down the line, the commission has the ability to pull that permit. and to say you have to quit business or you have to shape up or whatever. So I think that's one of the reasons why the ordinance is structured as it is. We have not got a site plan. Quite frankly, this is the first application we've had for animal husbandry. But it is something that is allowable in the ordinance. The ordinance is structured in such a way that the larger animals that the gentleman was addressing, you don't allow as many of them because they generate more manure based on their size and capacities. The ordinance allows the request with a conditional use permit.
So then maybe the bigger question is, has either this commission or Gary, question for you, the city council addressed the whole issue of animal husbandry in a residential area?
No, and not at the moment. And I think the administrator could expound on that. 3 terms planning commission, and we've had ostriches. If you'll remember, you don't. I do very well, and it failed miserably for whatever reason. I guess there was no money in it. I'll keep my comments, Mr. Chair, other than that, reserved for the end when you call the question. I have some comments on that I think need to be entered into this discussion. Thank you.
Comments, questions of
The
staff?
question on the enforcement, that's, Jerry kind of addressed it there, but that was my big question.
I guess I have another question too, since we're looking at sheep and chickens. We've just talked about the sheep here primarily. Were you, can I ask a question of the, Chris, were you intending to have roosters?
No. we had 2 and we got rid of them right away. Too loud. Yeah, it's not my intent to create that kind of commotion. We just have eggs, and they're as quiet. They're quiet. There was a rooster that flew into an area west of us, and they thought it was mine, and I said, no, I don't have roosters. So, the answer is no.
How did it taste?
Not good.
We have a resolution within the packet. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
I think before we make a motion, I'd like to look at what the limits are that have been attached at the bottom. Staff further recommends number of sheep. I don't think we've discussed that. There's a number there that's got a question mark after it, so that would imply to me that's not the number we're going to use. Same with the chickens. One of the questions was adequate shelter, and Chris did address that when he said sheep basically don't need a shelter. But if we make that a requirement, then obviously there would have to be one. And I would say, for the sake of the neighbors, probably they would want to see a site plan about where that would be. Would it be, even something, I don't know where we looked at the property, so I know, where your house is, et cetera, but I don't know where you'd be addressing that. I think you addressed the issue of the fencing pretty much, and that's going to be somewhat flexible. And you addressed the animal waste issue, so I don't know if there's more questions about that, but are there other conditions that we would want to see in it if we were to vote for this conditional use permit?
Peggy, are you asking Jerry to respond?
Anybody sitting here or staff, either one?
Adequate is an undefined term, of course. When you look at adequate shelter, a lean-to or an overhead might be enough for a sheep versus you know, a four-sided barn, what you might want for a different animal. I guess maybe, I don't know, you said that they had some kind of shelter. Monitoring or enforcement of all these, no matter what our ordinance are, that's like one of the biggest issues we have, no matter what. I mean, we've had it with sign issues. Do people put a sign in the wrong place, and does it fall on the administration in the city to go out and enforce all that? Similarly with animal husbandry, and where does the applicant need to prove that everything is going to be good, or do somebody who objects have to prove that well, there might be an issue that's caused by that's cause of concern because of these sheep? And we've got an ordinance that allows, I think, up to 200 sheep for that size of a lot, and he's asking for something considerably less than that. So I'm assuming that the area of the land is probably adequate for this. We've kind of talked a little bit about the manure issue, which to me probably would be the biggest concern that anybody would have. Either from, you know, my concern would be more of a runoff. Other people might be concerned would be more because the aroma smell like apple pie, and it may or may not. It may not be an issue. 20 acres is still a pretty good sized lot. I don't know and I don't know how if you get a complaint, if somebody says, I smelled something that probably was the sheep, Joe, I don't know what you can do about that. You know, I mean, where do you draw the line as to what smells good and what doesn't smell so hot?
Well, I mean, you know, if you smell manure, you're going to smell manure. I mean, but all they can do is haul it out.
You haul it out, or you get it
or spread
composted
it, or
and
put it
turned
on
and
the
whatever.
pasture,
And
that sort
I
of
would think that would be the responsibility of the applicant to be sure that there isn't aromas that are offensive to the neighbors. But I mean, it's just like I say, is if I didn't like a blue house next door, that's probably too damn bad. I mean, the blue house can be there. I mean, the sheep are allowed to be there according to our ordinance, and maybe not everybody's going to like it, and maybe somebody does like it. Some kids may like to go over the fence and look at the sheep. So it's hard to say what one person likes and what another person likes. When we get to the motion part, I would be willing to make a motion for approval.
Would you like to do that now?
I will make a motion that we approve as written by, I think it was Jerry in this case, to approve the application of, we've got to get to what we would say numbers that were kind of left blank when you look on the conditions as to, I think 200, even though it's allowed, it might be too many. And he doesn't want 200, but we need to have a number in there that's adequate to take care of when baby sheep are born, that until they get grown into an age where they can be sold, there needs to be some room for more sheep. So I would suggest, if that's part of the number, that the maximum allowed would maybe be 50 sheep and 100 chickens. And I put that in the proposal.
So that would be a part of your.
That would be part of my proposal. That was part of the staff recommendation, but they left those parts blank.
Did everyone follow that? 50 sheep, 100 chickens? That would be a part of the motion? Okay. We have a second to the motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second it. Can't do that.
You can't do that.
I like to see the number of sheep lower, but, you know, that's my opinion.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. All a second does is permit discussion.
Right.
Right.
Therefore, I would encourage that to move this along, and you can make your conditions if necessary. Thank you.
Okay. That's a good point. I'll second it then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion of the motion. Roger, why don't you continue?
Well, I would suggest lowering that 50. I mean, I realize 20 ewes can have probably 30 lambs, so you have is 50 already, so is there a condition where you could have so many ewes and, or that might be not what he's looking for, you know? Fine, you know, the 100 chickens is a lot of laying hens, more than I'd want, but, and I'm guessing that's more than he wants.
I think there would be allowed 2,000 chickens for the size of their lots.
I know.
Even 100 is substantially lower than what the
Right.
size of the property would permit.
Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman
there's a open forum at the end of the meeting where the public's allowed to speak. Please, thank you.
Further discussion of the motion.
I would like to wait until we see a site plan of the property.
That's a good idea.
We would either need to make a motion to table it.
What would the site plan entail before we modify the motion or withdraw the motion? What are we looking for on the site plan?
How close to the neighbors the sheep would actually be staying, and the fencing, what the fencing would be like, where the shelter would be, where the chickens would be, where the, where he would be using his compost pile for the manure.
We could ask the applicant, is that something that's already somewhat set up, or is it something that he, at least maybe he needs to put on a piece of paper, maybe it's already done? Let's ask the applicant.
Jerry, did I hear you correctly that you have not viewed a site plan?
We have not viewed a site plan.
Okay. Mr. Lindholm, could you address that question?
Happy to address any question. What was the question?
Do you have a plan?
Site plan.
Yeah, essentially, the plan is, there was a west pasture and an east pasture that were fenced in for horses when I purchased the property. So my long-range plan is to use the pasture that's there, which is otherwise just going to be wide open grass with nothing on it. So was to establish a perimeter fence for the sheep on the west pasture and on the east pasture, the part that I own, because I don't own the whole west pasture. The previous owner owns the further west part. So it was to perimeter fence that and to graze the sheep in that area. As to the shelter question, I already put up a little 4x8 run-in shelter for the ram in the area he's in, because I wouldn't have a animal out in an area that wasn't sheltered. I just wouldn't do that. The barn that's there is more than adequate for sheep. It's a horse barn, so it's a 4-sided barn. As for the chickens, I have a dozen. I don't want 100. The coop is a Martha Stewart coop that would be published in a magazine. It's ridiculously expensive because I want it to look good. I want it to be attractive and be not an eyesore for myself or for my neighbors. So I haven't in any way looked, again, it's not a profit. I got 3 eggs a day that I get for my family, and that's about it. So in terms of a site plan, the plan is to have the perimeter that was used for horse pasture fenced so it's safe for sheep. That might take me a couple of years because the fencing is expensive. In terms of manure, I currently am putting that on the north side of the east pasture, but I'm very happy to move those to the west side if it makes neighbors happy. All we got to do is talk, and that moves it further away from anybody. And my purpose there is to compost it down to use it for repurpose it for good use. I don't see having a dozen sheep as causing any issue on 20 acres in terms of the amount of manure we create. My own garden can absorb 99% of that. That is the plan, and if I have to put more detail to it, I'd be happy to.
If you were to talk about the compost pile,
Sure.
as a condition, could that be stated in such a way that the compost pile would be no closer than, I don't know whether it would be, 400 feet from any boundary?
Yeah, that's
I
a
mean, just
great
say,
option.
keeping it far enough away that you're not putting it over on the outside fence line.
Right.
As opposed to, like next to your basement window.
Absolutely. That would be very easy for me to comply with.
If we were to place a limit to the number of sheep, your application says up to 50. What number could you live with?
I think 40 is very reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have a day job that's very busy, so I don't have time for much more than that.
You're not talking 40 ewes, you're talking
No.
40
No,
total.
that's like 10, 12 ewes, and then lambing comes, and you got, that thing going on, so,
Then you sell the,
yeah,
after
Yep.
6 months or whatever.
yeah. 5 has been, again, I'm a full-time employee, and so is my wife, so 5 is pushing us. It's our 14-year-old that helps us out, so.
Carol, are there any other questions you have while Mr. Lindholm is at the speaker? About the site plan?
Would it be reasonable to put it in as a condition that the sheep are on the west pasture rather than the east pasture? Because the east pasture would be much closer to it's more open and it's closer to the neighbors.
No, because I would ask you this, why is there an east pasture there? It grazed 2 horses. It's just going to become an overgrown grassland that becomes brush. It's a pasture, and I bought the property because it is a pasture. And frankly, I would argue that I think a handful of neighbors bought property there because they enjoy looking out their back window and seeing animals. So it was a pasture when I bought the property, and I petted the 2 horses that were on that property. I don't know. I think I would insist that we be able to have some animals on the east pasture.
And you say you bring them in the evening, in the enclosed fence?
Well, I do now because it's not safe
Right.
outside where I have it fenced. But my goal would be to have that fenced so that it's safe, say, 3 years from now.
Right.
Yeah.
Joe, as a matter of clarification, we do not have a number, a maximum number of animals in the motion as it reads right now, correct?
The resolution's written is in draft form. You can certainly add or change conditions as the commission sees fit. Larry made a motion with his motion. If he amends the motion and it's seconded, you can continue on with that.
I'd be willing to drop to 40 since he's willing to accept 40. And maybe even drop the chickens because he doesn't want them from 100 to 50, even though, I guess he probably will never get to chickens, are a lot of work too.
Okay. Would the seconder agree to that?
40 total sheep.
Is that a question or is that a second?
It was a kind of a statement.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I? A second, a
Right.
re-second, if you will move the motion along and is still subject to discussion, folks.
Right.
I.e. 20 sheep,
Right.
30 chickens, whatever, with possible room for expansion as long as the checker or checks and balances are put into the CUP to do that. That's what a conditional use permit does.
Right.
So a seconder, would you agree to that number?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Do we have a number on the chickens then?
That was down to 50. He didn't want 50 anyway, I don't believe.
Okay, 50 is the number. Further discussion of the motion as amended.
I think we all have to be aware of the fact that this conditional use permit is well within the bounds of the ordinance. And the ordinance has been approved by both the planning commission and the city council. And any second thoughts we're having about what's in the ordinance is certainly open to discussion, but at the moment that this has come in, he's met the terms, and if he's willing to meet the terms that we're putting on it, I don't,
Well, within the, yes.
yeah, he's within is what's allowed. You know, from the point of view of neighbors who maybe have an issue with the whole idea of animal husbandry in a rural, even though it's a rural setting, it's a residential area, you know, that's a different issue that needs to be addressed, if that's how people view it. And that would have to be brought to the city council, I would presume.
An ordinance change, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
So who goes out in council? Just the question.
pardon me, Roger?
The question was who council? Jerry?
Same person who measures how far a sign is from a right of way.
I think we have to presume that unless we have information from whoever to the contrary, that the terms of the CUP are being met. And if we notice they're not, or whatever, we can certainly bring it to Jerry's attention. He is the person who's supposed to be enforcing the,
Typically, if there's a violation of the CUP, we do hear from typically the neighbors. That's pretty apparent. We certainly can monitor it to make sure that they stay confined, and I'm sure the odor issue will be something that will be brought to our attention if it becomes an issue. And if it becomes an issue, I think you have the ability to yank the conditional use permit without any concern.
That's why we need to establish conditions which are measurable.
Right.
Yeah.
Joe, could you read the motion?
The motion was to adopt the resolution 1603 with the conditions of no more than 50 sheep, or 40 sheep, excuse me, and 50 chickens. You haven't addressed that issue of manure composting that you talked about, but other than that, it would be as it stands.
I think Carol mentioned, didn't you say something about no closer than 400 feet from a neighbor's property line? Is that what you
I
said?
said that, I threw out that number, I don't know if 400 feet's
I don't know.
a fair number, but I would like that as a condition in there, that the compost pile not be on the perimeter, but somewhere more in the interior of the piece of property.
How would you like it stated?
I guess the question for Chris is, how wide is your property?
I honestly don't know.
Didn't you say it was an acre?
10 acre square.
1,800 feet, isn't
No,
it?
I thought it was an acre.
No, that isn't right. 13.
40 is
Come on, engineer. Engineer.
If it's 10 square, it would be what, 670? 660. 660.
650 wide,
Yeah. so
so then the compost pile shouldn't be, if it's 650 wide, you can't be 400 feet from both sides.
No.
Not easily. So you could say 300 feet from each side, then you've got 50 feet to put that compost pile on the longest line you want. Is that doable?
I don't think it work, but I think to be reasonable.
You know, we just don't want it on the line.
Right. East Pasture's probably half of the pit, so that.
Yeah. But if you're gonna compost it, that's where it would be concentrated.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna, before we call this motion to question, I'm going to ask the commissioners to just bear with me as I take you through the findings under section 153119E2, and I'll do that quickly and just highlight them. Condition one is this application should not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property, or diminish or impair property values in the immediate vicinity. The conditional use will not impede the development of surrounding vacant property. The conditional use will not create excessive additional public costs. The conditional use will promote and preserve the Northwoods character. Conditional use shall not create traffic congestion or problems. The conditional use will provide sufficient off-street parking, which shouldn't be an issue here. Adequate measures will be taken to prevent control of odor, fumes, dust, noise, and vibration. No disturbance to neighborhood properties will result. The conditional use will not result in destructive loss or damage of a natural or scenic features of the surrounding property. The conditional use will promote the prevention and control of pollution of ground and surface waters. Are the commissioners clear about all of those findings? Okay, good. I will then call the motion to question. Did you have anything to add, Councilman Barton?
No,
Okay.
I've added enough, and
Okay.
you've come to a good decision, I believe.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
I still have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carol.
Yeah, I think Roger brought up one point, is that the fact that the manure would stay in the pasture, and I think that's some of the concerns of the neighbors, is that if it's out there in the pasture on a hot, humid day, is there going to be an odor?
The deer do it already, absolutely not.
And so do horses. Forgive me.
Okay. Call the motion to question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion passed. I'll just remind everyone that my vote is in the affirmative unless I state. Okay. We will hold another public hearing. The public hearing is to consider revisions and updates to the comprehensive plan. I will open a public hearing for that hearing of the revised and updated comprehensive plan. Staff review.
I'm going to make this very brief.
Please do, Joe.
Short one, Joe.
We have been working over the last 6 to 8 months on updating the comprehensive plan. The plan really hasn't provided too much in the way of policy changes. It's been more of a matter of updates as to where we are with regards to its compliance and the goals that were established in the original plan. The ones that would have been met have been removed. Those goals that continue to be goals remain in the plan. But by and large, the plan has only been updated. We did fold in the master park plan, which was earlier an addendum to the plan because of the timing. But that is now in the body of the plan itself. And from that standpoint, what we're looking for is a recommendation from the Planning Commission to forward this to the City Council for their adoption.
Joe, could you remind us who was on the committee that reviewed the plan?
Sure, it was Councilmember Bakken, Carol Metzger, and Jerry and I, and I think, and Tom Lilley, Mayor Lilley.
We've spent quite a bit of time on this, and thank you, Joe, for your memo. That was very helpful in our packet. Any questions of Joe? No? No questions? Are there any public statements that anyone would like to make on the revision of the comprehensive plan? I guess not. I will close the public hearing and move to action by the commission on the revised comprehensive plan. As Joe stated, we need a recommendation. Does it need a motion, Joe?
A motion to
Okay.
recommend it to the city council.
Okay.
I make a
Someone-
motion that we recommend the ordinance 1601, is that
No,
correct?
no, just the comprehensive plan.
Oh, just the comprehensive plan to the council.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Any discussion? Gary?
I get mine. Thank you. Just a couple of quick notes. I want to thank the city administrator and the zoning administrator for their extensive work on a comprehensive plan, folks. It is a tough nut to crack. This is my third one. First two made me an old man. Now I don't know what I am. But they're very laborious, I assure you. So I would encourage a positive vote and look forward to it coming to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion passed. Now we'll move to a public hearing to consider zoning ordinance amendments. Staff review, Joe.
Okay. As council gave us direction to do a narrative instead of just the chart that we have in the ordinance. And in going through the chart, we found a number of problems, conflicts, things that didn't add up. One ordinance provision would say one thing, another ordinance provision would say another, and they didn't match. And so we went through the process of kind of going through these one by one and trying to make a decision about what made the most sense in making those changes. Along with that, then, each district was then defined in the ordinance, starting with 153.031, low-density residential. And we listed the allowed uses, the permitted uses, the conditional uses, and interim uses. We also made a declaratory statement that prohibited uses are those uses that aren't listed, but did list a few of them that could come up in conversation. Along with that, too, was the other chart. There's two charts. One is the land use chart, the other is a setback and lot size chart, and that too is listed in each of the districts. And so it's kind of redundant in some respects, but each district is a little different. And so there is those things identified. Through this process, I think we really did a good job in trying to understand things, but one thing that did come up just as of recent was trees in the airport district. And I was informed that there's some trees that do pose some problems for FFA. There's also trees that would like to be, or the airport would like to remove for future development. And so I'm asking the commission to consider whether or not the removal of the removal of vegetative matter, it's on the last page of the chart, clear cutting basically, in the airport district would be changed from conditional to allowed. And the narrative would also have to be changed. But I guess that's one question that we haven't addressed, and I would like you to address it this evening if possible.
Questions of Joe about that?
Which lots are you talking about exactly where the?
Well, apparently there's some trees down near the end of the runway that are too close to the runway that have to be thinned out, but they're primarily talking about these trees over here. When they get winds coming from side, it creates kind of buffers and problems with wind shear. I'm not a pilot, so I'm not sure I'm using the right words, but.
So this is a safety factor in
it is a
essence?
Safety factor, yes.
Okay.
So you said clear cut, they're not taking them all out.
Well, right now, according to our ordinance, if you take more than 25%, it's clear cut.
Oh, okay.
Cliff, maybe you could answer that question when we get to public statements next. Okay. Any other questions of?
I've had more questions about animal husbandry in the last week than I ever in my life
Yeah,
thought.
this is clear cut, no, unquote.
Clear cut. And so I do have a question here. If you look at the chart, which I would highly recommend that everybody in the audience look at this chart sometime, but under ELR, the discussion that we just had, we have it as a conditional use permit. We all agree with that. Then why is R1 allowed instead of conditional use? Because basically it's the same size lot, et cetera, et cetera. So why do we have that as a?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that question. It could be R1, the lots are not that big, so it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference.
Well, R1, I thought they could be up to 2.5 acres, aren't they?
Yes, they could be up to 2.5 acres, you're correct. We don't really have any well, we might have some. Yeah. We can certainly change it if you feel it's appropriate. We can go back to the drawing board. I mean, we don't have to, recommend this ordinance tonight.
Well, to me, it just seemed inconsistent to, I mean, the other two A's make sense. An R1, throwing an A in there made no sense to me whatsoever, but maybe there's a good logical reason. I don't know what it is, but.
Without going back to the ordinance,
Certainly change it to a conditional use.
well, we could
very
certainly
easily.
change it to a CUP or whatever. I mean, we can address that tonight too. but
There's one down
Let me just
below.
look real quick and see.
Greater than 10 acres.
Yeah, do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Greater than 10.
It is in the ordinance currently. I mean, we didn't change that. That's just something that was there historically, and I don't know the reason for it.
That is in parcels greater than 10 acres, though.
Yeah.
So there may not even be there.
Even though it's zoned R1 and minimum lot size is 2.5 acres, in order to do this, it's allowed on parcels that are greater than 10 acres.
I know, but that's what it is under ELR too.
Right.
Right.
So why wouldn't we treat them the same? Just throwing it out there.
Well, it's a good discussion item. Do you want to change it? I mean, we can. It's real easy to change it right now.
It
I think
seems
we
like
should-
now is the time to
It is.
do it if everyone agrees.
Well, if you want to make the ASC, I agree.
Peggy, do you want to make a motion?
Do we have to have a motion, or can we just,
Well, I think we
Direction.
can have a,
because we're still in discussion stage.
we're still in discussion. We can have consensus that that's how
Okay.
you want to change it.
Okay.
Just like the airport tree thing.
Okay, then we'll hold that until we take action on the ordinance. Does that make sense?
As long as I understand there's a consensus, we'll do the motion to approve the ordinance,
With that
recommending
change.
the approval of the ordinance, subject to those changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
George, okay. Okay,
What about the airport?
yeah, well, we're still in staff review. Are you done, Joe?
Well, yeah, I guess you're in discussion, I'm sorry.
Okay, public statements on the revision of the ordinance, and Cliff, this may be a good time to answer that question about the trees.
I'm Cliff Muller. I live on Airport Road, airport manager. And trees in question are the approach coming from the north. We'd like to take those out to the property line, which is maybe 50 feet. But we also would like to keep from getting the crosswinds here on the trees south of the airport boat storage. And so I understand there was a conditional use permit or something to that. I don't understand all that, but our FAA wants us to remove some of those, so. I didn't want to go start clear cutting and.
Bad word.
Been there, done that.
Questions of Cliff?
So, just so I understand, you want to do some of them that are right along 11 here, and then
Yes.
do some that are on the end of the,
Yes, mainly these here, because just as you're about to touch down, these are real close to the runway.
didn't you
Yeah.
take some out a few years ago?
Yes.
or put them out? Yeah.
I'm gonna give some
Is-
testimony at the end if I could.
Did the conditions change? Did you
No,
have-
they are better. I've installed a windsock at the north end, but we're still getting that burbling that's coming from the trees being too close to the flight path. Safety issue for FAA. Minnesota wants us to, kind of move them back further.
Okay.
And I appreciate the cemetery taking the easement so we can,
That'll be part of my testimony.
okay, thank you.
Thank you,
So,
Cliff.
sure.
Do you want to hold that, Gary, until our discussion of
You
the
tell me
action or
when,
now?
you're the boss.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we'll close the, unless there are any other public statements on the revision of the ordinances, we'll close the public hearing and move to consider the zoning amendments.
For sake of a discussion, I move that we accept the 16, whatever it's called,
1601.
okay, as written in the recommendation, with a clarification of the animal husbandry and a clarification of the removal of the trees.
Okay.
That's good.
We have a motion? Thank you, Peggy. We
I'll
have a
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I guess from my point of view, what I said earlier, if the FAA is recommending it and the pilot's coming in there, it's not even a question in my mind. It's
Exactly.
something we do, period.
So is that part of the ordinance, though, the
Vegetative
cutting those
removal.
trees? Oh, vegetation removal for the airport? What do we need to change it to?
We would be changing the clear cut in the airport district to allowed.
Okay.
And then the other one that we talked about was the animal husbandry in R1.
Okay.
And then I'll change the narrative as well. The chart's easy to change, but I will change this.
So Peggy, is that the clarification you're looking for in your motion? Okay, and so those clarifications would be a part of your motion? Okay. And Carolyn, you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Bakken, you were
Just
going
a
to say
couple
something?
quick comments. Peggy hit it right on the nail. If we don't move, the FAA will move in the state, and they'll force it. When we built the cemetery 12, 15 years ago, same thing. We had to take down some beautiful trees. It hurt like heck, but aviation's aviation, and the airport is a wonderful attribute, an asset to this city. Therefore, we have no choice, folks. Either we're going to go ahead and do it, or the FAA is going to come in and force it. And you may want to make note in that motion to remove the trees per FAA, Federal Aviation regulations. And as Cliff indicated, they cause a burbling of the air, which on touchdown, you're crabbing and the airplane's going like this, and it doesn't help. So it's got to go. I'm sorry. I hate to do it. Your dad was a pilot. He knows what I'm talking about.
So Peggy, are you okay with including as per FAA
Absolutely.
regulations? You got
We're
that?
good.
Okay.
Is
sounds
it
good.
a FAA regulation or is it a recommendation? That
The
would be-
recommendation.
I think it's,
Yeah.
I think it's
Is it
right.
recommendation now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it a regulation or are they recommending?
They won't renew our license.
Oh,
Yeah,
sounds like a regulation.
Sounds like a recommendation.
It is a regulation.
Yes.
It's part of the FAR's, Federal Aviation Regulations.
And they stand right there on the runway with the GPS.
And
Tell
they
you
were
which
here.
trees to take and everything.
Yeah, they tell you, identify each one.
Okay, everyone is clear about the wording of the motion? I'll call the motion a question. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any, Anyone against the motion? Please say aye. Gee, went blank. Whew.
Motion carried.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, we've revised the agenda slightly to start with number 3 of K, which is conditional use permit of the laundry dorm facility on Airport Drive. Jerry?
The planning commission approved a conditional use permit for the laundry dorm facility, which is adjacent to Airport Road. It also includes the maintenance facility that was existing at the time. The properties were combined in order to make the impervious surface and those type of things work. At the time the conditional use permit was approved, there were a number of conditions that went along with the permit. We received a request to issue a final certificate of occupancy for the laundry facility. Before issuing the certificate of occupancy, we went over and took a look at some of the terms and conditions that were passed as part of the motion to approve the project. And we found some of those that were deficient at the time. And we sent a letter to White Birch and asked them to, told them about our concerns, and we asked them to address the concerns. About 2 months ago, I think Jeff Johnson came in front of the Planning Commission, and he was going to try to address those concerns, but the Planning Commission, the letter that we sent had just gone out, and the Planning Commission was not, it was a staff letter. The Planning Commission was not aware of the concerns that staff had forwarded to them. And we postponed that to this evening. Mr. Johnson this afternoon presented me with a memo, and I think I provided you a copy of that at your desk this evening, as far as how he's proposing to address those issues that were identified in the letter. Mr. Johnson is here. I'm sure that he could probably tell you how those issues are going to be resolved better than I can.
Jeff, is this a good time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Johnson, representing White Birch. I don't really have anything more to add other than did Cliff leave? Okay, I guess I thought he was going to stay and hear this, but I guess he didn't have a concern about this. But there was one note. I was talking with Jerry about the memo earlier today, and I may have misstated this slightly. I didn't want to state on here that all of the trees that were planted were 10 feet high and that Mr. Mueller cut all of the trees down. That was not the case. The taller trees that were in that 6 to 8 foot range and some in that range were the ones that he cut. The shorter ones, he did not cut the top off of the shorter ones, just the taller ones. So I wanted to make that clear. I don't really have anything else to add. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I met with my maintenance staff today, and they've agreed to this. They had several other plans that they needed to be working on, but this was, I told them there are other plans that had to be put on hold because we have to get this ready. Because this has definitely gone on long enough and needs to be put to bed. So I am here to answer any questions and make sure that happens. And I do apologize for the time it's taken to get this done.
Questions of Jeff?
Is that fence really 6 feet high?
really 6 feet high.
Is it?
It is now.
Oh,
When we put the fence, we used the old fence that was on the south end of the building, and so they just brought it down there and put it up there. I didn't go down and measure it, I was assuming it was 6 feet. But when Jerry pointed out to me that it was not 6 feet, we went over and we raised it back up to 6 feet.
and that's where the board on the bottom comes in, huh?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
I move that White Birch be directed to complete the terms of the CUP and of the landscape plan for the laundry and dormitory as agreed to by White Birch and as approved at the P&Z meeting in September of 2013 and the P&Z meeting in June of 2015. It will include all terms with no changes for the fencing, the storage, the landscaping, and full compliance. No later than June 1st. It's been long enough.
okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion of that motion.
No, I covered it pretty good.
Very good. Motion.
When we went by there the other day, I just noticed that behind the fence, there was, I don't know what it was, it almost looked like a semi
Yes,
sticking up. So that is above the 6 feet then, right?
yes.
Does that stay there?
We can haul it out, but it's got to go somewhere else. I mean, it sat on an open lot where the laundry building is. It's not a storage item, it's filled with storage. If you're going to count that as storage, I guess we'll have to get that out, but it'll just have to go sit on another lot somewhere else.
I would ask staff what is reasonable about what should be in that fence and out. It says here that plows, buckets, man lifts, construction dumpster, et cetera, are all going to still be outside the fence?
In all fairness, the area is zoned commercial, and those are commercial type activities that happen on a regular basis, and they happen at other lots around town. The question of the semi and the storage, that's 50-50, and it's a perception type thing. I can say that when the conditional use permit was considered, the biggest concern about the area was the junk appliances, et cetera, that were strewn around the existing lot. And that's where the fence came about more than anything, was to hide those, hide the trash per se. But that was the real intent of what it was. I don't think that we went into whether there could be a semi-trailer parked on a commercial lot or not. Quite frankly, I would suggest to you that if having that semi-trailer there is probably keeping an eyesore out of sight more than anything.
I guess what I'm really asking is, when the CUP was written, was any of this discussed? And what exactly would go inside the fence, was it discussed? And the site plan for the landscape plan was not approved at the same time. That came quite a bit later. Why wasn't that all part of the CUP?
The CUP, I think, said that there needed to be a landscape plan that was approved by the planning commission. That's why the site, or the landscape plan, was approved in 2015 rather than 2013 when the CUP was brought about. But getting back to the CUP, the real issues were more the junk appliances and just the unsightliness of the area at the time. I can't speak for any more than that.
There were 3 planning commissioners, I think Carol and Joe and Larry were all at that meeting. What was your recollection of that discussion?
Well, I remember that the reason the junk site was kind of approved was, Jeff, I think at that time mentioned that with the number of units that they've got, they're getting, dead washing machines and dishwashers and stuff all the time, and rather than haul them away on a regular basis, this allowed them a place to store them until they can be hauled away, and that's why we said, but okay, then you need to put up something, a barrier for the people who don't, not only live across the street from, but those of us who drive down the street too, to try to make it as less unsightly as it is really possible.
Well, and I remember all that, but I don't remember us discussing, like the semi-truck or any of that.
I don't
kind
think
of
the
stuff.
semi-truck issue ever came about. I don't think it was brought up.
Okay.
That's my
Yeah.
recollection also.
Well, I don't think we didn't get into exactly what might be in there. It's just it was gonna be mostly stuff that needed to eventually be hauled away.
It would seem to me, Jeff, that it would probably be good if nothing went in there that was over 6 feet tall.
You're over 6 feet tall.
Yeah. But you
Yeah, I
can-
just can't stand in there.
By a damn sight.
What is the semi, is it in there just to hold stuff for storage?
Yeah.
The reason I said that is I do recall it being an issue that nothing should protrude over that 6-foot fence.
How tall is a semi?
12 feet.
I was gonna say twice that.
How about some 12-foot trees?
Well, we have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion of that motion?
Well, I think we have to discuss it because the motion clearly talked about things like 10-foot trees in the landscaping plan, et cetera. That was all part of the original. And if that's not being met, then I don't know how.
It would need to either be, you're either gonna tell White Birch, put in all new trees that are 10 feet tall, or you put in an alternate resolution to that, which maybe mean a few more trees that are a little bit taller as opposed to the same number they had before. But if you've got two smaller trees, maybe you put in another 10 trees that are 10 feet tall, spaced in a way that's gonna hide that fenced area a little bit more. There should be a number in there that we can go to add rather than take anything out to replace. That's probably not feasible.
I think the letter that we got from a council person, and I believe you all saw that letter, I think he was pretty clear in the point that he made that when we have a CUP that has conditions, if the conditions are not met, then is that a precedent we want to start revising the CUP after the fact, for example?
I think, again, it comes back to, is the semi a piece of storage like a TV or a junk dishwasher, or is it a piece of equipment like a plow or a man lift or a bucket? And if it's a piece of storage, then yes, it cannot be above the 6-foot fence. If it's more a piece of equipment, then, I don't know, I guess that's a different animal at that point. If you want me to go back and replace the trees or put a slightly taller fence, I mean, we can look at doing something like that. I guess if this is a thorn in somebody's plow over this, then yeah, I think we need to get it straight tonight, because I don't want to come back on May 1st or June 1st and say, no, you're not done. Go back and redo it. So I'd really like to stay here till we get this done, because I don't want to have this discussion again. I agree. I've read Mr. Maroney's letter as well, and I don't know that I guess you three, did I say that I was going to have 10-foot trees there? I don't believe that I said
It was
that.
in the conditional. It was in the plan that you guys had.
It was on the landscape plan, and that plan was
Somebody had
approved.
hand wrote 10-foot tree on, 10-foot pine or something on there?
That came with it,
Right, I understand that, but somebody wrote that on. That's what you're referring to?
yes.
Okay. So that wasn't, I didn't say that, I didn't write that, I don't know who wrote that on there, but it didn't come from me. So if that's what you want, if you want me to put 10-foot trees in front of the fence, I can go back and replace those. if you want that semi out of there on a different lot, I can move the semi to a different lot, I suppose.
I don't know
That it's gonna be ugly wherever it is.
Jerry?
I guess just the question that he said, put trees in front of the fence.
In the boulevard.
Okay.
Sorry.
I didn't want to cause any further
Yeah,
problems.
I meant in the boulevard, excuse me.
I think it's, if this motion passes, Jeff, I think it's clear that we're all agreeing that there need to be 10-foot trees as per the landscape plan.
Okay. You want 10-foot trees all the way in front on the boulevard?
Am I correct?
That's what the landscape plan said.
Yeah, most of those are 5, 6 feet at best.
And as far as the storage goes, you know, if it was not specified in the CUP what that included, then I don't know that we can hold too much to that in terms of the semi, for example. But I guess it tells us we need to be a little more careful when we write our CUPs.
I don't think that's a problem because the city is always very careful when they write CUPs for us. I can show you lots of areas where it's not so careful for other people, but it's always very careful for us.
Okay, I'll call the motion a question, unless there's a need for further discussion.
So there's a possibility you could bring another trailer in.
We don't have another trailer. We had that trailer. We had to put that trailer somewhere because it's where the building was to be built.
They sell more trailers, but if,
We're not looking to buy another trailer.
yeah.
The brakes are locked up on that thing. Had to drag it where it was.
You're gonna have to helicopter it to move it then, aren't you?
Something.
Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Brain cell work that time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We will then move to number 1 of K, which is the concept statement and site plan for North Star Convenience Store, building located southwest west corner of Ranchette Drive and County Road 11. Jerry, do you want to give us a quick overview?
Sure. In your packet is a very preliminary conceptual plan of a potential development on the corner of Ranchette and County Road 11. This is totally in infancy at this point. After talking to developers, we felt it would be appropriate to bring it in front of you so that you know what's coming down the line and have an idea of the concept. There's some things that need to be worked out here, and there's some things that need to be included in a developer's agreement as we go forward. There would also be conditional use permits and all that kind of stuff coming down the pipe. But it's an attempt to introduce you to the topic, to let you know that there is something that is being talked about at this time. And with that, the developer's representative is here also.
Maybe you could just introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm David Landecker with Wink Associates. I have a residence here at 8581 Bren Drive, Breezy Point. So I'm here tonight, and again, Jerry sort of explained it. In your packet, you've received sort of a sketch plan. You've also got a concept statement. It was also made part of the public record for the meeting tonight, so I won't spend a lot of your time reading through that. Unless you'd like me to, then just go ahead and I can do that. But I guess the purpose of the meeting, as Jerry said, was just to sort of provide an introduction to the activity that the developer, White Birch, would like to pursue in that particular corner of your city. And that the site is already zoned commercial, so this is an allowed use through a conditional use permitting process. The plans are preliminary tonight simply because, as Jerry said, there's things that need to be thought about. Where does the public sewer best fit the future needs of the city? And it's a complicated site from the standpoint of topography and the developer getting the gas pumps and the station and the buildings all situated correctly so that the vehicle flow and parking and other attributes to that area fit well. So it's something coming towards you at some point in the future. The goal of the developer is ultimately to try to have a plan that makes its way through your commission and the city so that they could be in building this facility sometime towards the end of this construction season, September, October, so that it would be built during the course of the winter. That's sort of the vision of timing. So as it would hit your review mechanisms, it might be coming back to you in June, July period, where you'd have then public hearings for open comments on the various conditions, all of the items that would need to be met with stormwater, landscaping, and ordinance requirements. So it's kind of a precursor. Again, your comp plan, your zoning, it all addresses this particular area as being suitable and suited for this type of development. The other thing I want to just bring to your attention is there's no proposal here for turn lanes off of County Road 11 per the study that's behind you. We've had discussions with the county engineer about access to this property, and so we're mindful of what the plan is there, and we're not trying to force a different kind of arrangement. We understand that at some point when the traffic counts reach a certain level, that intersection at Ranchette and 11 could potentially be either lighted with stoplights, so controlled intersection, or a turnabout. But that's not in our plan. That's something that be determined at a later date when traffic counts came up. When you read the report, it talks about 10 years from now or beyond. So it's all about how fast is the city developing and at what need is that intersection required. So really, that's kind of it, I guess. Part of the reason we're here is not only to introduce you, but if there's some red flag that you are aware of that you want to bring to our attention and say, hey, this is an important feature that I'm concerned about. It's a great time for us to hear from you, or if we leave the meeting tonight and you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and the flag goes up and you give Jerry a call and let him know, then he can pass it on to us as well. So it's kind of, we're in that preliminary stage of what can we do best to make this fit the city and and be a great neighbor and commercial attribute to your community. So with that, I'm open for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Linebacker?
Oh, go ahead.
Carol?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
So it's definitely going to, the driveway's going to be off of Ranchette?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then offices, what do you foresee as offices being?
I mean, that's just sort of, again, the developer's brains. What might fit in there? I mean, it could be a CPA, it could be an accountant, it could be a surveying office, it could be a lot of different things. But it could be that it turns out to be part of the convenience store needs. But they wanted to, they didn't want to limit it in their initial brainstorming or thinking, because that's still where we're at. Is that part of it? And if you read through the concept statement, and I know I visited with Jerry and Joe about this, is at the very end it says that this is potentially as a condition up to a 7-year project time frame. And the reason the time frame was put in there to that extent is kind of to answer the question of does the building all get built at one time? In other words, it might be, as you look at the little print, there's the box out where the convenience store is located and the offices kind of fall off to the side. That, we want to make sure we come in here and have thought about what the whole plan will look like. If it's a possibility that the whole building wouldn't get built all at the same time, that it would be done in phases. And as we get closer to bringing a plan before you, we'll have more information as to if it's going to be a stage development and how that might look and how it would fit conditions. I'm not sure if that answered your question exactly.
It does.
Okay, thank you.
You're gonna have to move a lot of dirt, right?
Yeah, yes, yeah, actually, I've suggested to the developer that they look at the whole site and try to, manage the earth there to accommodate future development on the site, if that were to occur, because the site is, capable of having other commercial attributes on it as well, as far as what your ordinance allows with both the density and pervious coverage kinds of things. So that whole site likely would be under, a dirt moving activity to, balance the dirt, because particularly like where the red barn is right now and then towards the highway, there's a lot of rolliness and it drops down, and so to kind of, if you envision it, might be more terraced where that would be flatter, and then you would go to where this driveway is and then it would flatten out to another level above it, so it kind of terrace itself down. Is the vision, without getting into the plan detail right now. Good question.
Other questions?
And you are planning to get rid of those two buildings that are?
Yeah, the two buildings would be moved off the site, correct.
And the horses.
We know where the horses can go.
Yeah, right, exactly.
There's an animal husbandry
I know
place
where to
out
put
there. They'd go really good with 20 sheep. So,
Any other questions?
This looks like it goes into the wetlands. Or isn't that kind of lower?
now the wetlands are actually way out here, quite a bit away, probably nearly 800 feet actually from that building. And, as part of the plan, I mean, that's part of the overall plan that we need to satisfy the city's requirements, is to make sure that we develop a stormwater feature that captures the water and that it's treated before it travels beyond that into that wetland. At this moment in time, the wetland is actually on a different piece of property, which is not zoned and, part of the presentation that will be before you. So it's a different, it's a different tract altogether. So it would not be impacted in this development, and it's not, I guess, the only consideration would be for us to manage stormwater, and then ultimately have a landscaping plan and things that would, help.
If you're required to put in 10-foot trees, be sure to 10 feet.
Oh, yeah.
I know what my landscaping plan is going to say. No. Point taken.
Okay.
Point taken. Again, part of me coming here tonight and making this presentation is to, have an opportunity to listen, and many of the things that you've addressed tonight are important as you go forward in the planning process. So it's been fun to come back and be here. I've been in front of this planning commission, not all of you, but a number of times over the last 30 years. So it's nice to be home.
So actually, the development is going to be managed by
White Birch.
White Birch,
I
okay.
believe.
And I noticed that you're talking here, and I think, Joey, you might have mentioned something about that, the private sewer?
Correct. That's what the plan shows, but again, in discussions, I had to get something on the table so we could have discussions, correct? So we've done that, and Jerry and Joey both talked about that the sewer, the likely connection, and we need to look at it with the city engineer, but would be to come off of the intersection here at Ranchette and County Road 11 and come directionally drill underneath the highway so we're not tearing it up, and place a manhole. The first manhole would be in the right-of-way on Ranchette, and then our sewer would travel into our property, no different than a normal residential or commercial type of property. So at that point, it would become private. But again, we're in the infant stages of planning and thinking, and so those are all moving parts that we'll be addressing. So as it's showing now, the plan as is shown now will be revised not to look like it currently is.
So when you come in, you'd be bringing us a well-developed plan?
We'll meet all your ordinance requirements.
Very well.
Good.
Yeah. It will address all, I mean, we'll be working with staff to make sure that when the plan hits your review process that it will have addressed all the items that's required in your ordinance and comp plan, including landscaping.
10-foot. The 10-foot rule.
Jerry?
Some of our conversations have been what the proposed uses are. You might want to verbalize just exactly what some of those might be.
Sure. Yeah, so in the concept statement, I kind of lay out there that this convenience store has the the potential to provide grocery, retail goods, fuel sales, offices, car wash, off-sale liquor, an RV dumping station, and then associated items that might go along with convenience items. So that's that's the types of activity. I think it's not unlike a lot of the Pelican Square building, that convenience store that's here, or the store in Pequot Lakes and those kinds of things. I mean, it'll be that type of activity joined together there. So does that cover that, Jeff? Uses?
Did you say liquor store also?
Yes. Yeah.
And a car wash.
Correct.
Discount to all Breezy Point residents. Just a little levity for.
Is that full-time or just if you have a?
No, yeah, we
street
don't get
address?
into that.
Okay.
Is there anything in, when you mentioned Pelican Square, anything like a Subway or a whatever? Is
I
that
don't think
considered
we've thought that far ahead as to what types of things. I know we've talked about a coffee shop. Yeah. I mean, I think as we mature and get the plans too, we'll have more definitive answers to that, because we're still in the process of developing the architectural site plan and floor plan of the building.
Thank you for your presentation. It's interesting. We look forward to seeing more in June.
All right, thank you.
Approximately June. Thank you. We will next go to 2, which is a concept statement and site plan for Deacon's Lodge Second Edition outlots adjacent to Arnold Palmer Drive. Jerry?
Again, these lots were some lots that were recently rezoned from R2 to our resort commercial. Again, this is a conceptual plan to get it before you. This one probably moves ahead a little bit faster than the other one. The proposal is for 10 units of vacation rental housing. And with that, I'll turn that over to David again.
All right, David Landecker, 8581 Wren Drive, Breezy Point, Minnesota. So this particular plan, as Jerry said, will likely be submitted in a preliminary form to meet your preliminary ordinance requirements by the end of the week to get on the agenda in May for your planning commission consideration. 2 things are happening in this particular development. There's a plat, so we've got a preliminary plat that you'll be addressing. And that's the configuration of the lots that we have labeled there, lots 1 through 10. The 10 lots would be the cottages, that would be vacation rental, and then the open space lot, common lot would be 11, which has parking, utilities, and open space activities going on within them. So that will be a plat that ultimately gets recorded and then allows the developer to sell individual lots along with that common ownership and common use. Not unlike a lot of properties in Breezy Point, but the most recent one that you'd be familiar with is White Birch Village. So the difference between this plat and White Birch Village is that White Birch Village is residential, strictly residential, and where this will be commercial. I mean, it's a resort commercial. So, and it would be used for, if I wanted to buy a unit, for instance, or you did, you could put it in the rental pool and it could be rented through the resort. And that would be the primary function of it. So the resort doesn't necessarily intend to retain ownership of these, These would be available for people that would have interest in owning, and then ultimately letting the resort use that as a rental pool, so it would be an investment property. Not any different than what's already going on next door. So if you look at the layout that you have here, and there's a little stipple lines over here, that's the plat that's currently the Deacon's Lodge First Edition, which has several cottages built on it. I think it's mostly built with the exception of maybe 2 units that aren't constructed out there right now. The buildings would be nearly identical. So the construction, if you were to just want to see, I wonder what that might look like, you just drive out there and go look at the units that are there now, because that's likely what they would look like. Newer construction, a little different landscaping, parking definitely different, and we'll talk about that. There is city sewer out here, so we'll be putting in city sewer. Again, Jerry and Joe and I have talked about the sewer that we have on our plan, and then how they would like it configured, and so there will be some revisions to the actual, how that will look or how it will be constructed. The buildings will contain a maximum of 6 bedrooms each. So there's 6 bedroom units, and that's what's next door. There's a couple of 4-bedroom units next door, but for purposes of the design of this, we will look at the maximum bedrooms within the building would be 6. So that's, and 6 is an important number for you to remember, because it also it develops into the computation for parking, and that's where the 6 comes in. As far as the unit size and shape and square footage, that comes into play with the impervious coverage, which is on these tables over here that you can't hardly read unless you have a magnifying glass. But what I'll tell you is they meet or exceed ordinance requirements. So the design doesn't infringe on extra density or that kind of thing, is based on those conditions. Because what's interesting or what's unique on this property that you'll see as you get the final plans is that the Arnold Palmer Drive is a privately owned strip of land. It's actually an outlot. Outlot F, I believe, in the first development. So it doesn't have the same setback limitations as you do on a public road or a road like that. So we own the property next to us, and the setbacks there will be diminished from what's required on a normal public road. And that mainly comes into play as you look at units 5 and 6 in the plan. So I guess that's the concept. I can dig into the actual planning part of it. The biggest, the piece here that probably is of the most, the category that we need to talk about the most here is going to be the stormwater and landscaping and parking. And the ordinance talks about how you come up with a calculation for parking. And the numbers for this particular development would be, I believe it's 110 parking spaces, which is significant, significant for this type of thing. And I understand the ordinance is how it's written, and the calculation is there. What we're showing on the plan, however, is 68. So we're about 40 or so short of meeting that maximum number that's required. And I guess we're in a conditional use permit, and it's a plat. And so I think it's an area we can talk about whether that's the right number or not. And the reason I bring it up is because I look at I've been in the city a long time, and I look at your comp plan and all of the things you even talked about tonight in the other conditional use permit, keeping the up north character, all of the things about keeping trees and vegetating and screening. If we go in here and try to manage 110 lot parking area, it starts taking away from everything that you're trying to accomplish. Even the parking as we've shown it now seems to be greater than what actually the need is. And And again, I'm not sure how the park, where the numbers even came from that the ordinance have in it, or how that number was devised, 2 and then 1.5 per bedroom. I look at it and there's 6 bedrooms, even if there's 2 families, and there's, are we gonna have 11 cars per unit coming to this site? It doesn't seem to add up for me.
However, David, I live about 100 yards from one of these cabins, and there have been 20 vehicles at one cabin. And I just assume because each golfer is driving their own vehicle.
Well, and I mean, that's a discussion we need to have, right? And so, and I just mention it because I also didn't live 100 yards away, but I lived across the way. And while there was probably occasions where that happened, I didn't know, I didn't realize that it was to the point that it was that cumbersome, during those times. So it's just something that as you see the plan, as the plan evolves, it's, it's a topic that we need to discuss and, and get a handle on. And if the answer to the question is, the parking dictates units, then we need to get there. If there's other alternatives, such as finding different places to park nearby and designate those, I mean, there's certainly that option when there's an overflow period. So that if there's an overflow or there's extra guests, they have to go someplace else to park. We can look at accommodating that as well. But so for the main piece you have here is the plan. So you're going to end up with 4 sheets. Your first sheet is just sort of an overall, what the preliminary plat looks like. The second sheet actually has the elevations, the contours that are out on the property. The third sheet shows you the vegetation that currently exists out there in the various homes that are in the neighborhood, the streets. And then the last sheet shows you sort of an idea of how we anticipate laying out the sewer and the stormwater attributes for the property to accommodate that. And the stormwater, the idea of the stormwater is actually to be I'm trying to think what they call the water gardens.
Rain garden.
Rain gardens. So the stormwater is going to be a stormwater feature that will be indented, but, to beautify them and make them a garden rather than just kind of an open grass area. So it'll be a landscape feature as well as a stormwater component.
Would those be maintained by, there's an association fee apparently? So
This will be an
the
association.
would maintain those?
Yes, yeah. So it would be, I think it would be, as this develops, there would be a declaration, a document that ties the association, and then, has tasks for what is the association responsible for: snow plowing, maintenance of water systems, sewer, landscaping, stormwater gardens, rain gardens, and those kinds of features. So, but I think ultimately the goal is to try to, there's going to be a lot of tree removal here to make parking and units fit on the site, but the site is fairly flat, and so the goal is to not really go in there and root up, take it all down. Try to retain it, just like the property across the street. Almost looks, it's like, how could have they got that building in there? Because the trees just crouch, around it. The goal is to try to retain that same kind of atmosphere here, is to remove only what we need to create the parking and place the buildings.
So David, these are built as someone purchases? Is that how it will work?
Well, no, it could be no different than White Birch Village again, where you build a series of units speculating that you'll find investors. But I think in this particular instance, White Birch is hoping they can find the investors first before they build. So the goal is to get a preliminary plat in front of you and CUP in front of you as quickly as we can, so that it can be addressed. Once that's completed, then the developer has something that he can go to different interested parties to try to create an interest in it. Once the interest is there and we are ready to move forward, then the plat can follow. So the plat timing could be within this construction season. I mean, I think the resort would love to believe that that's a possibility. It's similar to the convenience store timing. But I believe the plats are good for a year, are the approvals. So I mean, it could be that it might be next spring. So I mean, our timing isn't exact, but the main thing is to get this approval in place so that we can then, jump into the next process.
How many square feet do you expect these cottages to be?
What
How many square feet?
are the buildings?
Will they heat them and things like that?
We're actually talking to an architect this Friday to discuss these kinds of things. So there's a lot of things you can talk about green, not only heating, but building materials and reuse and those kinds of things. So those are all being discussed.
I noticed when you have the map of the project as it exists, there's still 2 that are empty. Are those still to be built on or no?
Yes, correct.
There.
To be built on.
And then that kind of large empty space in back of the set of 3 off of Arnold Palmer Drive, is there an area in there that could be overflow, like right here? Is there an area in there that could be overflow parking?
Actually, if you go back to the second page, you'll notice that this is a significant depression.
Yep.
And the other part of it is that this piece of land here is actually owned by the association.
Okay, so it's open space?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
and
it's
that's not you guys?
No.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, the big picture is if, once we move forward, if we can have discussions with the association next door to combine associations would be truly ideal, because the more people in an association, the farther your dollar goes for all of the utilities and maintenance and those kinds of things. So I mean, I think the big goal might be to have that discussion, but right now we're kind of on our own. It's independent. So that piece, we can't use it. Even if we could, it would be limited to that sort of activity.
If parking is also an issue for those units that are already built, maybe that would be a point they'd be willing to talk about in terms of, partnership in an association.
Yeah, and part of the interesting part is in those units is that while parking might be an issue there now the way they were designed, your parking ordinance wasn't as it is today then when that was approved. And so, I mean, when you go out there and drive in there, Joe, to your point, there's room for maybe 2 cars. In some cases, 2 might even be hard to get in, some of them. And so it's like, ultimately, these were approved and they were probably allowed to have room for 2 parking, 2 per unit was probably the requirement at the time. And that's what they did. But there's ample room to do more here. If they truly were concerned about their parking, there's ample room to do more. They're just gonna have to take some trees down and be mindful of how it works, so. But, I mean, to your point, if we can combine efforts and come up with a different plan, I mean, all those things are possibilities. It's just, right now, we can only deal with the land that we have control over, and that's what we want to do. So, any other questions or thoughts? So what I'm kind of hearing from everybody is the parking really is something that we need to try to manage or stay as close to what the requirements are.
It was my first thought, David, because I see what happens next to me there, but as you said, all they really have is 2 or 3 parking spaces now. So when 10 guys are in that cabin or more, they're parking on the Douglas Drive there on the street. I don't think you want them parking on Arnold Palmer Drive.
No, definitely not. No, and I mean, so right now, if you look at the plan that we've submitted, we have 10. The smallest parking area is 10 for 2. So that would give 5 cars per each of those units. And then we have a couple of overflow, larger parking lots by the units 3 and 4 and so forth. And, I mean, part of it is and again, we can look at parking, it's just, for me, it's sort of like what gives and what's the justification, and we just need to try to weigh that out as how it fits. You're an expert because you see it across the street.
If a person owned like lot 4, cabin 4, and then that's the one where it's got 15 spots, are they gonna have where they wanna have possession of all those 15 spots, and they're gonna object to cabins 2 putting some cars over there?
Well, I mean, those parking areas will actually be part of the common.
They'll all be
element.
common, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, theoretically, so if you go up to unit 10, way up on the north end, we have a maintenance building there that will potentially include laundries. It's gonna have a water pump system that will provide water through the property for drinkable, potable water. So we'll have our own water system. But just in that area alone, there's 13 additional parking areas. So I mean, anybody from this group could ultimately go up there and park.
Sure.
Let's say you bring a boat up, and actually an example of this would be, oh boy, I've been away too long. What's the development that you have just up the street here with the mushroom houses? Eagles Nest.
Yeah.
So Eagles Nest on both sides of that property, if you drive in there and just look as an example, have overflow parking lots. So it's not by the units, it's just a parking lot that was just laid out there for people, if you're pulling a boat in, if you've got extra guests and you drop them off and they walk down the street to their units. That's what that one particular lot would be like.
And can you require that? I'm probably asking this question of Jeff. Can you require that as someone registers? As opposed to what they do at those 2 cabins by me? Okay,
You can tell them it's required, but
right,
they don't always follow.
right.
So, I don't know what the rules are, there's also a huge parking lot at the club.
Yes.
There's a lot of overflow there.
Yeah.
There's way more parking stalls.
Huge.
Yeah, I actually did the calculations on it, there's like 30 or 40, and it was just roughing it out on an aerial, there's probably 30 or 40 more spaces there than what are actually required for the size of the building, what's inside the building, based on your square footage counts. So there's a significant area there, and we've actually talked about it and looked at it, that we could easily help navigate and move some of this parking need if it's there. Maybe it's boats, maybe it's somebody, pulls a boat in and they just choked up 5 places.
Right.
And we see that happen, right? So your boats need to go over here.
Do these people have access to the marina down there where they could leave their boats down by Pelican?
Well, I mean, they'll be guests of the resort, so I mean,
So they'll
have the opportunity to use the resort facilities as a
So if
guest.
there's tight space, they could put their boat trailer down below.
Yeah,
As Jeff said, if they want to.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, a
Some
lot
of
of
them,
it's,
yeah,
a lot
they
of
want
it's
it- they want it
security.
close so they can make sure their prop doesn't disappear.
Well, if the beer's in the boat,
There
the
you
boat
go.
goes with.
More important.
Here's the boat, the people are in the boat.
So anyways, that's kind of the plan that's, ahead of you, and I just, thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak on behalf of both projects. Again, if something comes up and you have that aha moment, don't hesitate to get a hold of Jerry or Joe, and they have my contact information, they can forward information on to me. Jeff as well.
I guess, Jerry.
Just FYI, the strict adherence to the ordinance requires 1.5 parking stalls per bedroom and 2 spaces besides. So it's like 11, 6 bedrooms is like 11 required, strict adherence to the ordinance.
And, okay, so you're talking about a strict adherence. Is there room for a waiver, or how would it be handled then if we honored their request to lower the number of parking spaces.
Typically, this would be handled as a conditional use planned unit development type situation, and you can make that parking, those parking requirements, or you can stipulate parking requirements for that development.
Okay.
But I thought it'd be beneficial for you to know exactly what that number is, because I know we're going to, the land that's here probably doesn't support what's required in the ordinance. Or else they have to reduce units or
Reduce the
something.
size.
Or combination of both. The question is that a reasonable number? Yeah.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 3 items. We've already covered one with the larger parking lot at the actual Deacon's Lodge clubhouse there. The other one, David was talking about the usage of the homes. They would be for sale, and they would be available to rent through the Breezy Point Resort. They are not required to rent, however. If they can, the units that are at Deacon's right now are either vacation home usage only or rental. They're not allowed to live there year-round. So I just wanted to make that clear, that people are not required to rent, but they can't live there year-round. They can use it as a vacation home.
Are they required, excuse me, are they required to use the resort as the rental? Okay.
Yes.
They are, okay.
Yes, in the bylaws for that association, it states that it's either the board or the membership shall select a rental agent from time to time, and right now that's Breezy Point Resort. And so they are required to use Breezy Point if they rent.
I probably shouldn't be bringing this up, but the big cabin by me at the end of the practice facility, Jeff, I thought they were renting.
That's the one on Douglas?
Yes.
Yeah. That one is owned
Shouldn't
by...
bring this up.
No, it's a little bit of a sore subject, and you got me there. That is owned by our president of that association, and when Grandview used to manage their associations, the owners all felt that Grandview was not doing them justice and renting Grandview's units first and theirs last. And so many of them started using VRBO and vacation home rentals and some of these type of places to help supplement their income. And they don't need to do that anymore, but old habits die hard. And so we've worked with one of the owners to eliminate that, and he's complied, and we've got one owner left to work with. But unfortunately, he's the president, and it's kind of hard to push him around. So, you know, it's difficult. I don't mean to say push him around, but I just mean to get him to comply with his own bylaws. It's difficult. So, but yes, you are correct. Unit 11 is in rental, but not with us right now. We are attempting to rein that in.
So if a person cannot live there and can't be a permanent resident, are they limited to the number of days? Like, I own the place, am I limited the number of days?
No, I don't think
can
there's
use
any kind of a limitation to the number of days. I think it just states somewhere where the line, vacation home, you have to have another home. Obviously, if someone were abusing that, we'd have to address that. One of the key things is they wanted it to look nice, and they didn't want the storage and those kind of things that come along with residence ownership. So everybody seems to have a stack of wood or plywood or something behind their garage, whatever. So want to eliminate some of that stuff. The other item I wanted to talk with you guys about was this one. In their bylaws, it states that, again, this is the existing association, it states that no owner can subdivide their unit except with the approval of the association and the City of Breezy Point Planning and Zoning. Now, the issue of what we're interested in doing is not spelled out. All of our bylaws and declarations that we have developed for the timeshare associations that we've done has a clause in there about adding additional real estate. These bylaws do not have anything like that. We have made a request of the association last Saturday at their annual meeting to add these units into their association. They said yes. again, with the proviso, I said I wanted to talk with you guys and get the, I'm not sure if that's staff, it just says Planning and Zoning Commission, but I'm sure staff will want input on that. We would like to talk with you guys about that. I don't know what the procedure is to do that. I don't know if they know what the procedure is to do that, but I'm sure they can find out, League of Minnesota Cities and so forth. But that is a question that we are attempting to answer. We did not necessarily like the condition that they put on their approval, and so we could still do our own association and just model it after theirs. But one of our goals was to add this association into there, so it was just one association there. So I just wanted to talk with you guys to let you know that could be a question down the road for you.
When you say subdivide, what do you mean? Are you talking about dividing the buildings in half?
That's
or-
what it talks about. It just says subdivide a unit.
So-
That's all it says.
So, and I represented that project at the time. That was set up with, and I'm not sure what got built out there, but at the time it was like 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. There was a lot of bathrooms, a lot of bedrooms.
Yes.
A couple of eating areas. So, by the condominium standards, selling vertical airspace, you could go in and Jerry, you could own the top 2 floors and I could own the bottom floor. We just have to get our entries to work right. So there was an opportunity to bring in 2 owners into those buildings if you wanted to split them up, you know, in some kind of vertical space. And I think they want to make sure that didn't happen. Right?
I think they wanted us, it didn't happen all willy-nilly.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's in favor of that. We're not asking for that, but that's the only reference to doing anything similar to what we're asking for, adding real estate into that association. Again, it's not covered in their bylaws or declaration in any way, shape, or form, but I don't know, and maybe we can't do it. I don't know, because it doesn't say you can, maybe you can, and that might be the answer. I don't know, but.
For me, working in that business, it's, I don't know that the city needs to be involved in joint, I mean, it's simply a matter of joining association. So Association B and Association A want to get together. It's a legal document that you have to meld together. Now, it might be beneficial to have the city review it to make sure none of the conditions changed from, you know, A to B, so that you're not mixing apples and oranges,
But we don't have Association A right now. We have Association B, and we want to add to it.
Right, yeah.
So it's just a little different. So I don't know what the answer is, but that is a question. If they decide that will change one of their conditions, then it becomes a question, and maybe it's a non-question if you guys don't have any opinion on it. I just told the association that I would talk with the city and either find out if you need to approve it or you don't need to approve it.
So you have 2 questions for them. One is would they have an issue with you having one large association that cover both properties?
Right.
That question is one question. The other question is remove the condition about further subdivision.
That's
a moot point.
It's a moot point for me. I was just bringing that up to show that they were giving the Planning and Zoning Commission some form of oversight for one issue, and this was another similar issue that I just thought should be at least talked about from the standpoint of if they had a concern. I don't know that they do or they don't, but it's usually it's just an odd situation because we're not the declarant for that association. When we do that, we always add in that clause about additional real estate, but there was nothing added into for that. So I don't know if a different declarant can add to another declarant's association. I don't know how that works.
You have to have an attorney.
So that was it.
I think sometimes we get too involved in some of those projects that we don't really have any business.
That could be the case.
Sometimes.
But I mean, I think the point here that Jeff, that's really important, forget about the legal background noise, because that's a question we need to get an expert to answer. But the real question I think that Jeff suggests is if there's an opportunity to bring both properties together, does anybody see that as an issue? You know, if all of a sudden we get this project approved with 10 units, and the other one's sitting over here with a dozen, and lo and behold, everybody gets word that they've been combined and now it's 23. And again, to me, that's an approved thing. If you approve this, this is approved, and it's a matter of they join and it's happy days again, right? Because now
I would think it would be less confusing to have one association rather than one here, and 6 more somewhere else.
So I
So
think that's the point of the resort, is if they're maintaining and they're renting, and it just, everything makes sense because everything's running the same on both properties.
And we don't need an answer on this right now. I'm not expecting a motion to approve or disapprove this, but I think it would be nice to have some kind of a statement from you, one way or the other, if you want to have a say on it or you don't, basically, so.
You know, I'm just curious, once the property is owned by somebody and they're a member of an association,
Why do we care?
pardon me?
Why do we care?
Well, if there is an issue, who does the city hold accountable?
It's the association's problem.
The association,
I
okay.
mean, realistically, we sometimes require drafts of association documents just to know that they're working
Sure.
on it, but we don't approve association documents.
Right,
And so it's basically their business.
right.
The business you're in is that the conditions you develop for this project are measurable, as Mr. Neer said tonight. So you can go out there and say, is your stormwater in compliance? Do your rain gardens comply? Is your parking comply?
Yes.
Those conditions will all be part that you'll administer. But how the day-to-day operation goes, when they're gonna paint the building or change the siding, that would be their deal. Who's doing the rentals?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, guys. We'll move quickly to other, and I assume there are no others.
Well, actually, I do have one.
Oh, good, Jerry.
I'm sorry about that. I got a request today from a gentleman who has a house and owns some property on Birch Lane. Property is zoned R3. He is planning on building a garage eventually, but he would like to mill his own trees on the site into boards. He wants to have a portable sawmill there for a certain amount of time, whether that's 6 months or 9 months or 10 months, who knows? I can't find anything in the ordinance that allows it. I can't find anything that even addresses it. And I'm wondering how we would even, what do we say? We don't have anything that says yes, and we don't have anything that says no.
didn't
How
I
large
just,
is his lot?
Pardon?
How large is his lot?
He's actually got 2 lots. I didn't figure the square footage of them or anything like that, but he's got one lot that his house is on and a lot that he wants to put a garage on. He's also got some space that's on the rear of his lot that the power line goes through that he's planning on utilizing. They have an easement across it, planning on using that for the sawmill.
Neighbors?
There are neighbors around.
Sawmill?
As long as you don't let them do a 24-hour shift.
Yeah.
didn't I just read in one of the documents that we've looked at for tonight that if it's not specifically allowed, that means it's not allowed, it's excluded? Didn't I just read that?
Well, under the new code, yes, it would be prohibited. You'd have to come in and ask for an ordinance amendment or that approach.
That strikes me as a very noisy kind of a business.
And I said the same thing, and the response was, well, it's no different than my neighbor using his chainsaw in his house, around his house.
Yeah, but he's only using it for a short period of time. This is gonna be a 6-month project.
It's a
No,
construction
no,
project.
no, I don't buy that 1
Where's
second.
Birch Lane? Where is Birch Lane?
It's right here.
Down here.
Oh, right over here.
Yeah, what's the guy, the cabinet guy.
He just wants to mill his own trees on his yard to build his garage.
Yes.
Can't see why he couldn't do that.
What?
I don't know why he couldn't do that.
Is it Generix?
Pardon?
Is it Generix? No, isn't Generix a cabinet guy? No.
I don't honestly know. I just got this afternoon, and Jeff walked out and he walked in.
And Jeff walked out again.
Perhaps we need more details.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. He did come to say, can I do this?
Yeah.
Rather than just going ahead and doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Say what?
yeah.
That's one of the firsts. Well, good luck, Planning Commission.
Are you asking for anything formal here? You're just putting,
You know, if in fact you were even going to consider it, I would think that you would want to do an interim use permit.
yeah,
Tightly controlled.
very tightly controlled.
If you were going to
We'd
even
have to-
consider it. But
I
is that something that's compatible to a residentially zoned area with small lot sizes?
Especially
You
in
know,
R3.
these aren't 2.5 acre lots, these are
R3.
small lots.
Oh, there's no way.
But he says he cuts the trees this way, and I'm just cutting the trees this way too, so just
Yeah.
cutting the trees different.
But he has enough trees on the two lots apparently to,
I assume that he's gonna do some of his own and he's gonna bring some in, because I don't think he
Yeah.
probably has enough to do the whole thing.
Well, my personal opinion is I would say no, but
so yes,
I'd say yes.
You gotta dry them before you can use them.
yeah.
So they're gonna be stored there for 6 months, you gotta take them.
My personal opinion, where I'm sitting on the commission, that's a no-brainer, folks. You don't even want to get messed up in that.
Agreed.
Well, go ahead, approve it. You gotta take a vote. The chair rules.
Well, we don't have anything in
We don't
front
have
of us
anything to
right
vote.
now.
Yeah, we don't have to have any.
I don't think you can approve anything, quite frankly, because
We
you
have
don't
nothing to
have, you
approve.
don't have a vehicle to get them.
No,
Right,
exactly.
yeah. So,
It's the moot point.
There's two reasons that I bring that in front of you. One is, we do get some of these oddball requests occasionally that we have to say absolutely no. He specifically asked you, that I ask you.
well, I mean, I agree with David. It's good that the guy came in and asked, but you have that one, you know, we've talked about the noise factor, the smell factor, whatever. That's one where you're gonna have the neighbors beside
Hauling
themselves.
trees in and out, backing them, come on. Don't, I can't imagine. You want that next to you
it wouldn't bother me.
for 9 months?
I mean,
Oh, I don't think
6
it'd
months?
be for 9 months.
Like the trailer down the road?
that's,
Come
was
on,
different.
come
That was
on,
different.
be real.
in fact, can I bring that up since we're
That might be an interesting topic.
talking about
We almost made it.
almost made it. Seriously, when is that trailer gonna be gone?
I placed a call to the property owner last week. I was basically told to deal with my attorney.
Are you kidding me?
No, absolutely. And they are, you know, in the process of preparing a lawsuit against the city. And in her eyes, the trailer is, we are harassing them because of the fact that they are contesting the insurance settlement. And in their eyes, it's tied up all into one thing. I did have a discussion with Joe after talking to these folks. And, you know, I think we have to go to the city attorney to figure out something that needs to be done.
Well, first
I
of all,
can't-
they were living in the house without permission, so, right?
I think they had a temporary certificate of occupancy,
Okay,
but I don't know that for sure.
I don't think they did.
They do have a certificate of occupancy now, but the whole thing with the sewer backup and the contested lawsuit just makes this thing a muddy piece of water.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, sometimes you stir it up and the worse it stinks. And I'm not being facetious. We can compound this problem. We can compound the potential lawsuit, and nobody wins.
Well, they're going forward with theirs.
So they say, but
So they
nothing's
say.
happened.
We don't
I
know
don't think
that.
they're kidding.
I don't know.
I don't think they're playing poker one bit.
Well, it's hard to know, but
Certainly.
when our adjuster asked for the letter from the attorney certifying engagement and hasn't gotten it, you kind of wonder.
Yeah, I did, that letter, okay. I would agree with that.
But the trailer is one issue. You try to separate the issues and they won't let you separate the issues. And then it becomes, well, you're harassing us and you haven't been friendly to us to begin with and you're pushing us around and where do we go with that?
Well, you know, you can call it harassment, but if we have an ordinance and we're trying to get them to comply with the ordinance, then it's kind of like the law, maybe?
The only thing that I can see as far as the ordinance is concerned is some kind of a temporary structure. And it's, again, it's on wheels, so it becomes a little bit tougher to deal with within the setbacks. That's the only thing I could see that's potential in the ordinance. Just because it's sitting there and says figurehead on it, doesn't mean that I can say, get it out of here. It's kind of like Jeff's trailer over there. I really don't have anything to say that Jeff can't have that trailer there.
Yeah, right, and cut,
You know, I appreciate
and build a garage.
perception and what people believe is tacky. And I think that's probably the biggest concern more than anything else. And if it didn't have fingerhut on the outside of it, nobody would probably say anything. But it's complicated.
Whole yard's a mess.
Oh, it is. The whole place is just a mess.
Pardon, Roger?
I said their whole yard's a mess.
Yeah.
Certainly it is.
And unfortunately, it's kind of the first thing you see as you drive into Breezy Point.
Do you want to move on to open forum?
Oh, yes.
You guys want to
Yes.
stand up again?
We will open forum number 2. Would anyone like to speak? You've been here so patiently. Oh, my
You had
goodness.
a good
You
night.
want to join?
You are one of the more tolerant people I've ever seen. It is interesting. Okay, we will close open forum number 2 and adjourn the meeting.
Bingo.
Good meeting, Commissioner.
Is this your copy of mine?
No, I've got one. Okay.
I mean, seriously.
I just had a question for you.